Do you remember when the government said that the Rwanda plan is the ultimate option in order to deter migrants from illegally entering the country? They said even the idea will be a deterrent. Well, since they've announced the actual plan, we have had more migrants coming in than ever before. Then they said when the policy is implemented, which is any moment apparently, they've been saying this summer, then we can feel at peace. Everything's going to be fine. But in this video, we're going to give you some details that we've now received about what's going to happen when they implement, if they implement the Rwanda scheme. So, migrants illegally enter the country. Now with the new legislation, the government are going to try to deport them back to their original country. And when they can't, they're going to send them to a third country like Rwanda. But the cost to the taxpayer is absolutely insane. And there are other problems with it as well. First, let's talk about the cost per individual, per migrant. So, it will cost the relocation of one single migrant £169,000. Now, if you multiply that by the number of migrants currently in the country and the migrants who will be illegally entering the country going forward, well, that number is going to be completely crazy. So, this is the estimated, obviously, the additional costs incurred relative to processing an individual through the baseline option 1. So this is according to the Home Office themselves, internal Home Office estimates that have now been released. It doesn't look too good for Rishi Sunak's cabinet. Now, paragraph 88 says costs that are assumed to incur under both the current migration system. Which migration system? And under the proposed bill process have been excluded from this analysis. Okay, so this includes the initial screening and processing steps when illegal migrants first arrive in the UK. Now, let's look at the table that we have. Table 4, estimated costs incurred to relocate a migrant to a third country. All right, so we have the third country cost itself, so Rwanda. We have to give them £105,000 per migrant. The Home Office resource cost itself is £18,000 per migrant. Flight and escorting costs £22,000. Detention costs £7,000. Ministry of Justice costs £1,000. And the total will be £154,000. Then an optimism bias 9%. So total costs will be estimated at £169,000 per individual. So that's one problem. There's also the original Rwanda problem. Do you remember what it was? When we broke the story about, well, it was a couple of years ago now, time flies, when I decided to read through the details and we published our thoughts. And then somehow we had other media outlets following us, which was good. Some media outlets reported this. We talked about how 1.1, this section of the actual Rwanda scheme, the partnership that they have, well, they called it the Migration Economic Development Partnership. 14th of April 2022. When you go down, the section that I've highlighted, when it says the UK is paying Rwanda an unspecified amount for each relocated person, well, now we know the estimate, to cover the costs associated with processing their cases. It is also funding a 5-year integration package for each person granted asylum in Rwanda and providing £120 million to Rwanda in development funding. That's on top of everything else. The British government has also committed to resettle in the UK a small number of vulnerable refugees currently in Rwanda. So I'm going to guess it's going to be 1 in, 1 out, or 2 in, 1 out, something like that. We're going to give them a couple of migrants. We're going to take another migrant from Rwanda. What? So we've already covered all this before, and the others decided to obviously follow us. But the problem I have with this is that even that debate kind of died down. Now we're talking about the costs. And those who say, well, in that case, let's not have the Rwanda scheme. Let's just basically keep them here at a camp or a barge or a military site, right? Well, we also now have the details of the cost to the migrants being located here. This is Steve Laws, a very good independent reporter and an anti-mass migration activists who released a Freedom of Information document from the CCS, the Crown Commercial Service. So this was obviously given to them in February, but we now can see the details. This is the cost of the contract for a barge to be used for 2 years for a few migrants in the UK. Look at the part I've highlighted. £1,593,535,200. This is the value of the contract for 2 years, excluding VAT and excluding the extension option for a contract for 2 years for a barge to only be able to host a number of, I don't know, a couple of hundred migrants on a single barge. This is scandalous. Now, we have to come up with a radical option. We can't just simply have people, staying here, even in a camp or a hotel or a barge, right? Well, clearly, the Rwanda scheme as an idea didn't become a deterrent either. The Rwanda scheme being implemented is going to cost us a lot of money. So the radical ideas that we've been talking about for a long, long time and advocated from many like Nigel Farage, you must leave ECHR. You must have a new relationship with these countries so you can send them back straight to their countries. And if they claim to be from a different country, well, pick up the phone. Say, hello, Mr. Syria. Are they from your country or not? And then that's when they're going to tell the truth. If they claim, for example, suddenly to be from Afghanistan, but they're not from Afghanistan, and you basically say, okay, we're sending it back to Afghanistan, I have a feeling they're going to come back and say, oh, actually, I'm from Egypt. So you have to basically reform the way we are dealing with international law at this point, because the sovereignty of our country is more important than these outdated agreements we've done, including the convention, the United Nations Convention on Refugees. That is extremely outdated. It was early, mid-20th century. Things need to change if you want the world to be stable and if you want our country to be sustainable. That is a reality. You can't just come up with like wishy-washy, essentially short-term policies or plasters in order to keep the voters happy for about 10 minutes. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this issue. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.